Welcome back to CLI's Legalpreneurs Spotlight Future 50 series. In this series, we're showcasing thought leaders and doers in legal innovation, legal tech and AI all around the world. Today, I'm joined by Colin Lachance, the innovator in residence at the Ontario Bar Association and the principal of his own consultancy, PGYA Consulting. Colin has spent his career in the legal industry. He's worked in publishing, consulting, legal tech development, just to name a few. In all that he's done, and there's a lot, there's been a consistent theme. He's comfortable with challenging the status quo and doing things differently. He's been named one of the top 25 most influential lawyers by the Canadian Lawyer magazine, a legal rebel by the ABA Journal, and also named a member of the Fastcase 50 class of innovators and visionaries. Colin's amazing background both qualifies and recommends him for his role as innovator in residence at the Ontario Bar Association. And we're going to get into all of that with him today. But first, thanks so much for joining me today, Colin. It's a little late in your day in Ottawa, so I do really appreciate it.
Well, Terry, thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me. And being summertime here, the days are longer. So I still have several hours of daylight ahead of me.
Yay! So I don't feel so bad now. Colin, I wanted to kick off by kind of delving into your amazing history in the world of legal innovation and tech. It's just so fascinating. So I've got to ask you, what got you into it and what's keeping you there?
What got me into it, so prior to being specifically in legal innovation and technology and publishing and so on, I worked in the telecommunications industry. So I worked doing legal and regulatory work for phone companies and cable companies. And so that meant really interesting technology policy, industry policy, internet policy, copyright, and things like that. And those worlds, because they're very technical, you work collaboratively with engineers. So but for 25, 26 years, both in that world and in the legal tech world, I've always had as colleagues and close collaborators, engineers of one stripe or another. I'm always an arm's length from an engineer in anything I do. After about a dozen years or so in that space, in legal, lobbying, and actually business management roles for a stretch as well too, I found myself attracted to a role in legal publishing. For folks who are familiar with OSLI, OSLI is a Canadian counterpart, CANLI, the Canadian Legal Information Institute. And in late 2010, CANLI was casting about, after about 10 years of independent operation of growth, for its first full-time president and CEO to work with a newly appointed skills-based board to develop CANLI's first independent strategic plan. Now, on paper, there wasn't anything really obvious about my background that said I should be running a legal publisher, but I just put an obscene amount of effort into understanding CANLI's place in the environment. And what I saw was a fulcrum, like the sort of the center point of technological innovation and legal information. I saw an organization that had the potential to really influence how lawyers engaged with information, and bringing my technology exposure into it, I saw lots of ideas. And so I worked really hard to get the attention of the hiring committee, going so far as to laying out detailed strategic plans for what I would do if I got hired. And as luck would have it, it aligned pretty close to what that new board itself was thinking they wanted to do. So that's how I fell into legal information and tech. How I got hooked was with every single person I met after that. Every single innovator, both in Canada and around the world. I mean, the folks from OSLI I met within a month of starting that, along with other legal information and tech innovators from around the world at a meeting of all these nonprofit organizations. So from the get-go, I thought this is an incredible space to be in, and that's only continued to improve. Then you start layering in the exposure to AI, basic machine learning, and just the advancements. It's just hasn't stopped becoming more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely amazing. But that kind of background and history in working in almost a multidisciplinary collaborative environment has also got to have stood you in good stead in terms of the sort of work that you're doing now, particularly, right?
Absolutely. Because I mean, everything you do in legal tech requires an understanding of technology and an understanding of legal practice, legal policies, the behaviors of lawyers, and the business models that they operate under. Very few individuals, certainly not myself included, know it all. So you have to bring what you know and work with people who know the pieces you don't, and find ways to work together in order to move things forward. So yeah, I was fortunate in that from day one of my legal career, I was involved in that kind of space. So it's my default mode.
Yeah, which is great because I think still in legal, it's still a bit of a learning curve, really, because we're used to working in silos and working in one particular area and not necessarily working outside law, much less anything else. So fantastic, fantastic kind of lead into the job that you've got, which does take me to that role, which is
Okay.
the innovator in residence role. You know, to me, looking at this from someone sitting in Australia, this is a really unique role. It's really not something that you tend to see in legal member associations, you know, like a bar association. And as I was prepping for this, you know, it was fascinating to me also that it's been around since 2018. So
Yes.
it's not something that kind of started you know, in the last 12 months or 12 or 18 months, as a lot of things have. But I want to get into kind of the nitty-gritty of what you're doing in your role. But before that, can you tell us a little bit about the concept of innovator in residence? You know, how long is it? What's generally the objective? And then, as I say, I want to get into more for what you've got planned in 2024, 25 as
Yep.
well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. The concept of this office, the Innovator in Residence office with the Ontario Bar Association, dates back several years, inspired in large part by work that the Canadian Bar Association did in what they call their futures committees in the 2015, 2016 timeframe, evaluation of different business models, influence of technology, and so on. So the Ontario Bar Association recognized the need to support their members in these developments. They're certainly doing all the usual things around professional development and education and other means of supporting their members, but they also recognize that this is fluid, and the priorities that a permanent role for an individual or a group of individuals within the bureaucracy of the organization may not always be able to sort of participate in the fluidity or whatever the sort of the zeitgeist is in the moment. So they created the office. They fund the office every year. They in earlier years, yes, there were business model focused innovations, technology focused innovator in residence. Last year, the innovator in residence was focused on diversity initiatives. Put together several really interesting education programs and career accelerator programs. This year, it was, you know, you look at the world around you, it's kind of hard not to pick AI as your focus. So the OBA approached me and said, "Hey, look, we're doing AI this year for the Innovator in Residence. Does this interest you? Would you like to do it?" It's you know, half, 2/3 time kind of job. It's a contract, so I do it through my consulting organization, but everything that I do within this and what prior innovators have done are for the benefit of the organization. It becomes part of the knowledge base of the organization that it moves forward with. But the specifics of how of what's delivered come from the individual, come from the person appointed to the office. They're brought to the role because of what they were doing, what they can bring in. And so, you know, as I feel honored that you're bringing me to this call. My function is to bring people like you to the attention and awareness of Ontario and of Ontarians and the lawyers here. And so what I'm going to be doing, the program that we've decided to work out has a few key components. One is what I call weekly office hours. Now, lawyers are going to be at varying levels of experience and understanding, interest in AI topics, but you don't want to leave anybody behind. But at the same time, you can't expect to do everything sort of like a linear thing. It's not like I can teach all the easy stuff in June and get incrementally harder month after month. So we have what we're calling weekly office hours, drop-in Zoom chats, where the first portion of the call, first 20 minutes, we answer questions that have come in by email or otherwise about AI. These are going to be all over the map. Then the next 20, we have a guest who comes from various places in Canada and around the world. They have expertise to share. And we talk with those folks to bring something in. And then at the end, we just show some cool stuff and have some open conversations. But that kind of ties into the second key pillar of how we're putting together this program, and that's a learning platform. Everything we're doing is not going to be sitting in a single repository that you click through once or twice, and maybe, you know, if you can find it, you can read it and learn from it. We're putting it into an online learning platform in the way that you would take a course, the way that you would say, today I want to learn about prompting. And, oh, what resources do we have on prompting? Oh, there's a course, there's quizzes, there's all sorts of things. And then the individual can progress at their own pace through levels of difficulty in this information. So let's say one of the participants on these weekly office hours either raises a question or discusses an issue that is more intermediate or advanced. That can be discovered by the learner at their time and choosing, because we've turned it into an element that goes into the learning platform.
Yeah.
And outside of that, we are doing the webinars and the like sort of the general webinars, conferences and so on, research. We're going to create best practices manuals and so on. But in the first few months, it is going to be very iterative in terms of people identifying, I need to learn this, I need to learn this, I need to learn this, I need to understand this. And so it's going to feel, if you look at it, you know, at a point in time in the first couple of months, it might feel a little chaotic, but because we're putting it into this learning platform, and I'd be happy to show it how we're doing that. It's going to be nice and organized when you are ready to learn. Yeah. So if you know, the weather's beautiful in Ontario in July, nobody wants to sit in front of their computer and figure out AI, but come September, they may decide now's the time. Don't worry, we got them covered. Meanwhile, we're supporting the people who want to advance as it goes through. And the last word I'll say at this point is that we've taken the position that teaching AI isn't an information dump. It has to be hands-on. It has to be interactive. And that's the last final pillar of this whole program for us, is how do we make sure that we let people actually experience what AI can do? So within the learning platform, we're doing that in two ways. One is we actually have an AI mentor, we call it like a digital twin, essentially, of the professor, Lawkey, LAWQI, that knows all of the content in the platform. So any piece of information, any course that we create, any learning resource that we have, any video, other document, becomes part of Lawkey's knowledge base. So people can ask that AI questions, and they'll get, the answers will be generated from the knowledge base that we've developed. But meanwhile, hey, you know what? We've now turned an AI novice into a user, just as they learn, because behind the AI mentor is OpenAI's technology, or Anthropic's technology, or Google's technology. We're building that functionality in, so we don't have to say to somebody, hey, go off and go to this website and create an account. We can say, no, here's how it works. You know, slide your mouse 3 inches to the right, or sorry, 10 centimeters to the right. We're two metric countries. We should use that. 10 centimeters to the right, 7.5, 8. And experience it. And that's beyond just that learning. Hands-on learning is going to be beyond just sort of the core AI. We're working with vendors to bring their AI tools into the learning platform as well, so people can actually get previewed experiences of these tailored AI tools for the legal profession. And that's going to be super exciting once we start showing that off.
Yeah. I love it. And I love that you've started with the education piece, because I think sometimes, particularly in our industry, there's kind of an expectation that we should already know this stuff. And why would we already know this stuff? But
Right.
it's almost, it somehow seems to be almost an embarrassment factor around the fact that we don't. So with this platform, you know, you can, it meets people where they are, right? You can go to it, you can get what you want. There's no judgment. There's someone there to help you, and you can progress at your own pace. I think it's brilliant, but I also know that it's taken a lot of work to get that together, right?
Yes. Yeah, we're lucky in that for the platform we have a partner who had developed this, has been has it in the marketplace in the U.S. education sphere. A few different universities have been using it. Several more are actively testing it, and so we have the benefit of knowing what kinds of questions people have had when working with this particular tool, and how do we modify that for the way lawyers want to learn.
Yeah.
So we're definitely doing that, but you've kind of nailed it. Like we want to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
And just a quick little aside, where they are is not where we would expect them to be.
Yeah,
You know, like
exactly.
when like people like you and I, we live in a bubble where we follow the people who are teaching us.
Yeah.
So because we're following people who are ahead of us,
Mm.
we assume we're behind.
Yeah.
But when you walk into a room of 100 lawyers, not self-selected but randomly chosen, and you ask the question, as one US law professor told me, if you ask the question, who of you are paying for ChatGPT, you come down to like 5 out of 100 hands is still up. The question I've decided to ask is progressive. How far have you gotten in your engagement with generative AI? The question itself doesn't make sense until I give you the examples for people to select. The first stage is, I have heard of ChatGPT. The second stage is, I have tried it a couple times, and then I have like 9 stages through. But in the last week's office hours drop-in, 33% were, I have heard of ChatGPT as their starting point.
Yeah.
And frankly, I can't blame anybody for that being their starting point, because if you were to ask me, are they behind for not having adopted it? No, they're not behind for not having adopted it yet. Will they be behind in the future if they don't? Yes, but plenty of time to catch up. So now's a good time to say, start me at the beginning. Tell me what the terms are. Tell me the basics, and let me engage to see value. Then I'll spend more time. Lawyers are busy. They don't have to be, where the terminally online people like us are.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think I agree with you wholeheartedly. It doesn't matter that you don't know. What's going to matter is that you've done nothing. And that bit of it, I think, is approaching very, very quickly. But the fact that you don't know at this point, you've still got a little bit of leeway before.
Yeah.
But you've got to jump on the journey, and you've got to bring everyone with you as well. I think that's a really important bit as well. This is a big job. If I understand it correctly, you've got like 16,000 members, and probably more as we're speaking, with in the Bar Association. That's a lot of people to get to.
Yes. Luckily, I've already mentioned the technology partners I have who've allowed me to accelerate my starting point from where I expected to be. I had expected my big job to include building these platforms,
of course,
or at least some elements. So I got to move that forward. The other thing that's helped create or make this a little bit easier and more manageable is the OBA itself has done good programming on AI. They've been on top of this. Yes, it's only small groups, but it means they've created a lot of useful content that can be repurposed. So that certainly helps.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll be fully blunt with you here. AI really helps me with this.
You'd hope, right?
I use AI to help create the content.
Yeah.
So, some things like a basic glossary. I say, here are 5 great sources of glossaries of key terms in generative AI and artificial intelligence generally. Help me create a version that focuses on 30 terms, at least 15 of which are meaningful to lawyers.
Mm.
And then I get in and I edit it. So I am not turning my job over to AI, but I have AI assistants
Absolutely.
in doing this, and that's going to be helpful. And the last thing I think that is really helpful is as people become more engaged and they want to learn, I can point them to so many other public sources out there that are just dying to educate people. So I'm officially supporting the Ontario Bar Association and its 16,000 members. In Ontario, the Law Society of Ontario has 55,000 members, including licensed paralegals. And it has some education programs as well. The Law Pro, which is the mandatory malpractice insurer, has 32,000 insureds, and it has an interest in supporting, and that's just in my territory. That's just in my province, and so, but every other bar association everywhere is trying to help create. So I'm certainly not alone in the wilderness in trying to create information. I have the luxury of having a class, if you want to call it, the 16,000 people that I can pay particular attention to, but I have cohorts and colleagues all around the world that I can lean on.
Yeah, absolutely. But what you are creating, and I guess somewhat curating, is a starting point for people,
Yes.
a launching pad for people. And I think, and you were saying or alluding to earlier, that what folks are finding quite overwhelming in the space, and I think you and I probably do as well, is just the sheer volume of information and vendors out there. And it's kind of like, gosh, I want to jump on the train, but it's moving really fast and it seems to be expanding with more carriages every time I look at it. And
That's
I
right.
just need a place to start. And I think, I know at the center, that's kind of one of our objectives as well, but you're creating that, and you're creating it in a situation that is neutral. So, no one's sponsoring you particularly to do this or to do that. It's a neutral place where people can come. And I really do congratulate you on that, because I think it's so needed. Let me ask you this question, Colin. How are you going to measure success? Because I'm sure you've got some sort of metric in your mind. Is it going to be the number of people that you connect with or take your programs, or how do you get to the end of the first stage of your action plan and say, right, we've met this and this metric, so this is where we go from here?
Right. I think when it comes to numbers of engaged people, those are things we measure as opposed to target. So we measure and track how are we reaching out, and we don't say, hey, if we've hit 1,000 out of 16,000, that's success, or 2,000 is success, or 3,000. We want to reach everybody. So we want to see what activities are we doing that gets it further. Another key measurement that we want to focus on is, at an individual level, how are people progressing? And so using a learning platform is really useful for that, because anybody who signs up to it, and just so folks know the stage we're at, is we have a small number of testers right now, making sure we're working out some of the bugs and style. It will be fully rolled out either by end of July or early August at the latest.
Fabulous.
And then run for at least 6 months, if not longer, as we work things out with the OBA. But when somebody starts, they'll be quizzed. That idea of like, where are you? Have you heard of ChatGPT? Have you done this? Have you done that? And they will be able to see their own progress. They will be able to speak to their own progress. So it's if I can say, hey, X% have moved from novices into comfortable users, That's amazing.
Mm.
But I mean, I think one of the ways that we're going to see if it was successful is going to be relative to the experience of other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So if we see signs that you know what, the conversation in Ontario is at a more elevated pace than in another jurisdiction, we're going to take some credit for that because we've brought more people into the conversation.
Yeah.
So right now, the way you compare across jurisdictions is, I think it's not helpful. So if we say, hey, that particular jurisdiction has put out a paper. Oh, a paper, like a paper is really good. You had a bunch of really smart people come together and think about it, come up with a whole bunch of ideas, publish it, but 90% of your membership isn't paying attention to it yet. And are they going to go in November looking at your paper? And is that going to be the thing that they need? So if 5 or 6 months from now, I don't want to call out any jurisdiction because I think we're all figuring this out, and ours is as much of an experiment as everybody else's. But if 5 months from now we see a jurisdiction getting to the point of writing that first paper, that first ethics opinion, or the first little bit of guidance, and they say that's as far as we can go at this point, and we're much farther along, then we'll treat it as a success, because it means that we've created a sufficient nucleus or center of gravity to allow people to feel like, yeah, no, we've got that part understood. Now we have deeper questions. Now we're into what are the implications for insurance, for education, for business issues, and you start seeing activity on those small little pockets by informed people.
Yes.
Right now, and this is not a negative, this is just a description of the reality, but right now, if you go to any AI conference, legal AI conference or webinar, the presenters feel the need to cover the waterfront because the people in the room have different issues. If we can get to a point where you have a good number of people showing up at an event on a tailored topic because they have the basics covered elsewhere, that's how you really progress.
Yeah.
And so that way, it's a wishy-washy way of saying we don't know what the right form of measurement is, but we hope to recognize it when we see it.
Yeah,
that we've had the
absolutely.
impact.
And it is kind of a layered approach, isn't it? You've got to build the foundations and then build the kind of the bricks on top. I wanted to also ask you, with how you're describing the education opportunities, is there a thought that they will be able to combine together for some sort of certification or micro-credentialing? Because there's a real opportunity with what you're doing to also be setting a standard, as that knowledge base becomes a standard and it's recognizable and you know what that means, and so on and so forth for the other layers that you're going to put on top.
It's something we have our eyes on.
Mm.
Couple of things about that is this week there was an article in Law Next, the Bob Ambrogi blog, talking about the Philadelphia and Pennsylvania bars ethics opinions saying lawyers must become proficient. Now, it's not binding, but that's strong language. Must, not should, not would be advised to, but must become proficient. That speaks to certification. It speaks to some measurement of proficiency. Learning platforms, the one we're using through a company called Praxis, or others that people might be familiar with, like Blackboard or Brightspace or Canvas and so on, have these as part of their underlying tooling, the ability to build assessments and measurements around certain things, standards and certifications. Coursera and other learning platforms do the same thing. And then there are independent organizations who can set the standard for what the certification is. So while there's nothing in what we're doing that says that we're going to become a certification body or we can do it, we do have the means and the capacity to incorporate certifications into what we're doing. I mean, frankly, you can get a Microsoft certification or Databricks or any other AI company, NVIDIA, who makes the chips. they'll give you a intro to Gen I certification that you can stick on your LinkedIn.
Yep.
But I don't think legal is going to get to the point in the next 5 years where it has a certification that is essential to maintaining your license. But I think there's something in between getting the sort of the quick thing that you stick on your LinkedIn from Microsoft versus the far end of a professional certification that basically says, hey, this is what we set out to do. You've achieved these levels of competencies, and maybe the OBA itself or some other organization becomes the accreditation body to say at least reach this.
Yeah.
But it will be voluntary, I think, certainly for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I can just see it being helpful because there's a certain quality and standing behind the certification, but also as we grow as an industry, you kind of want some sort of certainty. You want something to know that might translate into a job description, or maybe it is going to have to answer a compulsory standard that's set by a bar association.
That's fair. That's fair. The flip side of it is that, as you know, any certifications based on a certain set of technical skills right now is going to be temporary, because different technical skills are going to be needed later on.
Absolutely.
It takes me back to law school many years ago, where my tax law professor said, "Nothing I teach you here will make you capable of understanding a tax problem. What you will do is be able to recognize it and take the first 2 steps in dealing with it."
Yeah,
and I think that is the target for a lot of technology education, is that we want to give you the ability to figure out the first few things and the transferable skills when the ground shifts and suddenly you're using a different tool to apply what you understand the principles over to the other.
Yeah.
So I think that's, if we're going to create targets, the targets are about transferable skills.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Let me regrettably wrap and ask you this question. And we've been talking about AI, I guess generative AI in particular, and just how it's impacting legal practice at the moment. And I was wondering, kind of thinking about, this amazing history and experience that you have in the industry, but also, I guess, focusing specifically on the impact of generative AI. Do you think, or do you see that as an industry, we really are on the cusp of a real and significant change in, that is both systemic, I guess, and not just limited to how we work? Are we there yet?
This is the thing that we've been waiting for, I think, to drive the change. We've talked about AI for a long time. I can show you a video and some other activities I did 10, 12 years ago, talking about technological change in law, talking about law as data. What year is this? 2024. So 11 years ago, I hosted a law data hackathon using Canly data. I had like the Canada's what was her role? The Information Commissioner for Canada as a speaker. We did development work. We had like all sorts of cool stuff, and that was really targeting the group of people who wanted to move forward. This is the thing that has to target everybody. And I don't think there's been an activity or a focus in law that has to target anybody everybody has to target everybody in decades, because we all know about ethics, right? We all know about competency. We all we all have some general sense that there's certain, like, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, certain things that you have to learn. And we all have a process for teaching that. This is the first time in living memory, I would suggest, for anybody in law anywhere, where you say, "Oh no, this is a new thing we have to figure out." Like that doesn't have a frame of reference, because it's not a tech thing. It's not an IT thing alone. Yeah. It is a cultural thing, and it's happening faster than we're aware of. So one of the other roles I've done since I left Canly, I've been involved with different startups technology focused, AI focused, and others. And what we're seeing in sort of the AI startup world is the sense of even the companies that were the most progressive, most advanced in the legal tech space, they're kind of looking up at the giant AI companies above them and wondering, where do I need to focus in order to continue to be relevant when each iteration of GPT 4 to 4.0, eventually to 5, the Claude products like Haiku to Sonnet to Opus, and then back to Sonnet 3.5, which is just mind-blowing in what it can do. It's eating up all of, well, it's not yet eating up the leaders, but the leaders are recognizing its potential to take them off the board. So what do? They have to turn to say, how do we support the profession? How do we support the administration of justice? How do we support access to justice with the unique things, and this ties back to multidisciplinary, with the unique things that tie what we know and care about the law and justice to what technology does? Because the tech companies alone, they may have the data in their databases, but they don't have the training and the focus to understand why we do certain things the way we do, or why we care about certain things. So this, like the AI stuff, is going to force a lot of these questions forward. And I haven't even gotten, and I don't think we have time to get into the idea of like, what does it do to evidence? Like, is that a real document or a fake document? Did a human do it, or was it generated? Is that a real video or a fake video?
Yeah.
We have a lot to contend with, and it's going to come so fast, that it's really about changing the mindset. So yeah, this is the thing. I think like talk about things like billable hours and business models are important, but they're not driving discussion. They're going to be reactive. As one person in a meeting I was in yesterday said, legal practitioners and the places they work at have to, like, buckle down and hold on for the ride. This is not something that they're driving. This is something that they're reacting to.
Yeah.
And I think even 12 months ago, people who were building AI tools like me wouldn't have said it's, I wouldn't be talking this apocryphally like, 12 months ago. I would say, no, we should really get on it. We should pay attention. Now I'm saying we got to move. Yeah. Because things are going to change. And so conversations like this, like the work that your center does, I think is really important. Every institution that has a role of in some manner supporting lawyer formation, training, access to justice, has to be thinking about this from something other than does ChatGPT hallucinate and make up cases. Like that was a 12-month ago discussion that some people are still having, but it's nowhere near the conversation that we're going to be having 12 months from now.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it's like there's a gap that will become a chasm, and you won't be able to bridge it unless you kind of jump into this soon. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's not something you can delegate. Every single person is impacted by this, no matter what industry and what job or what experience level. It's and I guess you can see that as exciting or not. I wanted to ask you, in legal in particular, what's going to get us there? Because we hear a lot about, reluctance to change, mindset, wanting to defend the status quo. You've kind of alluded to it just then as well. What is at the core of what we're going to need to change in legal to get from here to there, with there being coming sooner, probably this afternoon and not tomorrow, because the pace is so fast?
I think the core thing we have to change in order to be capable of handling the waves of what comes is a recognition that we don't get to decide it all. We have centuries of the legal community being able to say, we can't do this for this reason, or we have to defend this part of the institution, or whatever it is. Like could be unauthorized practice of law. It could be pick a topic. We've held the reins. We are not holding the reins anymore. So what we have to hold are the principles and defend the principles and recognize that there's going to be different ways of satisfying those principles. So the small thing that, glimmers of hope that we see, even though they're not necessarily proving to be directly effective, a lot of jurisdictions have these things they call regulatory sandboxes, where they say, we're going to allow this type of experimentation, even though it's against our rules, because we think it advances an access to justice purpose, or it advances some important purpose. I think that's the thinking that has to go broad. Yeah. But it's not going to be, we're going to allow it. It's going to be, oh my, like, there are forces coming up. Let's not purport to be in charge of whether they're there or not. So the analogy that I've taken to using is, it's weather, it's rain. It's a weather system that's moving in. We can't argue about whether or not the umbrella is sufficient. We have to start looking at, okay, well, the umbrella is not going to handle all of this, so maybe we should get some people under the awnings over here, or maybe we should, build some diversionary things. Maybe we should learn to live with a certain amount of rain. I mean, this is the nature of the change that's coming is environmental. Yes. And so if there's a principle behind the things that we've defended, let's focus on applying the principle to other experiences rather than defending the manner in which we've defended the principle.
Absolutely. But it's also, isn't it, fundamentally about changing, I guess, the focus on bringing folks to us versus, more than ever before, this sort of technology allows us to take the law to people, not requiring them to come to an office or a court or whatever the case may be, yeah, or only finding a solution by visiting a lawyer in person. That there's so much that's going to be available now. To me, that's kind of one of the mindset shifts for us. It's not all about us. It's all about
absolutely, and the parts that are about us are actually great. Yeah. Like about like what I do well as a lawyer, how I serve people. I'm going to find ways to multiply that.
Absolutely.
It's not about I can do this 10 times more efficient because I'm using AI. It's I can serve 10 times more people if I modify the way I deliver it. So I'm gonna play to the home crowd and say, I love the TV show Fisk. The solicitor, the wills and trusts, the wills and estates solicitor. So that's the model that so many people in common law jurisdictions have in mind for how lawyers practice. That's our protagonist in there, like, she's always gonna have trouble getting her coffee, but she's gonna find ways to serve 10 times as many people. And hopefully that gives her more time to get a better cup of coffee.
Yeah, long may we multiply and amplify, I guess, is another bit to that, right? Colin, just a fantastic conversation. I'm really sad that I've got to bring it to an end, because I think we could chat forever, but I wanted to say congratulations on the role again. And you've barely been in it and accomplished so much already. I can't wait to see where you are in 2025. And if you're up for it, maybe we have another chat in 2025 and see how it all went. That'd be kind of nice.
Absolutely. I think innovating in public is important, because the feedback that's available from proving is there. But we'll be talking in 2024, I'm sure, because you're going to be one of my office hours guests before this before this is out. You can bring, again, it's all about bringing the lessons, that the best practices and best understanding, so I'm going to be reaching out to you.
Thank you. It'll be my pleasure. Thank you again, Colin. Just wonderful to have the chat.
Terry, thank you.